And welcome, everyone. My name is Paul Pursuti. I am your host for our Wednesday night midweek oasis here at the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. We're so glad that you're here. And as you'll be able to experience tonight, our Wednesday night oasis is a place where we come together as a community to be spiritually refreshed between Sundays. Most Wednesday night services build upon the theme of the previous Sunday, sharing in satsang style, expressing science of mind principles and practices with the intention that these gatherings be informal, intimate, and interactive. Our annual theme for 2023 is Living Out Loud. Our monthly theme for October is Playing with Paradox. Last Sunday, Reverend Sunshine Michelle Coleman introduced ideas inspired by the talk title of Getting Comfortable with Discomfort. And tonight, our speaker will continue the exploration of this same topic. So as we gather tonight, I really want to welcome you. Early in her ministry with us, Reverend Sunshine invited us to come to the center well. To me, that was a personal invitation to participate in her ministry. And she laid out for us these 6 C's for us to consider and incorporate when we come well to the center. Come with a heart of love and tenderness, which she calls compassion. Come ready to exchange openly. We call that communication. Come in friendship and family, known as camaraderie. Come in harmony and ready to share, communion. Come in partnership and cooperation, she calls that collaboration. And finally, come in spiritual awareness and truth, and we call that consciousness. As we move into the program tonight, these 6 C's are the premise of sharing a wonderful evening with you tonight. If you're new to our community or watching us on YouTube at a later time, please visit our homepage, www.oaklandcsl.org, and click on the I'm New icon and look at the lower left-hand corner of that page to submit your email address. Once you do, you'll begin receiving the Village News newsletter once a week in your email. It has all the information on what is happening at the center in the coming weeks. Before we get started with the talk, please mute your own audio microphone during tonight's service. When you mute your audio microphone, you can leave your camera on. It will improve the quality of our recording and tonight's transmission. So please stay tuned through the end of the service so you can receive special and important announcements that I'll be presenting. So as we do with every organized event at the center, we open with prayer. Reverend Sunshine, will you do the honors this evening?
Absolutely, Paul. Thank you so much. And thank you, team, for always being there and being spot on. So, beloveds, let us come together in that inner sanctuary, in that place in space where the candle is always lit. It can never be snuffed because it is God lit. We are God lit. And we always have been, we always will be. And it is from this place tonight, knowing that God is everywhere present. It is here, it is there, it is everywhere. We know that that divine principle and presence is right here in the center of this service this evening at the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living in our midweek oasis. Giving thanks for everyone who has joined us tonight and who will come. I bless our speaker, Maude Wilson, knowing that she is anchored and grounded in spirit and has a lovely message to share that she does with ease and grace, with calm and assurance, that is enjoyable for us, that it helps us to learn and to grow and grow in our sense of paradoxical thinking and being. We give thanks for this, knowing that it is the truth, and it can be no other way but the truth. And God produces it for us in ways that are so much of a blessing to each and every one of us as we all are in community. So we can rest this word with truth and knowing that all is truly well. And together we say, as we affirm, declare, and proclaim, as well as accept. And so it is.
And so it is.
So it is. Amen.
And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Sunshine. As Reverend Sunshine said, our guest speaker tonight is Maude Wilson, and she'll be speaking on the topic of getting comfortable with discomfort. Now, I have a little bio, but one thing I do want to say is I'm really glad so many of you showed up to meet her tonight. I got to meet her at our parking lot party that we had. She was one of our vendors, and she was just lovely to be with and was lovely in everything she did that day. And when I read that I got to host for her, I was thrilled. So I'm so glad you're here to hear her. Now, Maude has been a lay practitioner of CSL for 14 years. She's the founder of Hush Harbor, Oakland, where she serves as a ritual artist, grief and end-of-life doula, funeral coordinator, and scholar of African American spiritualities. Her life's work is creating safe and sacred space for families to process life's big moments. She is a lifetime learner, world traveler, multi-passionate creative, and spiritual seeker. Maude continues to listen to African American ancestral wisdom to guide her into the right spaces to heal herself and others. We are so blessed, lucky, and fortunate that she's with us tonight. Maude, welcome. We're glad you're here, and I turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Your energy is just so amazing. Like, I'm so grateful that you're my host because, yeah, just seeing your face again, it just brings up and reminds me of how beautiful you were on the day we met. And so I'm really grateful to be here. And I knew Sunshine would just bring the beautiful prayer that would make me feel uplifted and love-filled. And just looking at your face was just so beautiful because it just shines and I just love looking at it. So anyway. So like Paul mentioned, I'm Maude, and I'm really grateful to you all for being here. Thank you for the full team, for supporting me in all the ways that you have, and for all of you for taking the time out of your evening to join this conversation. I'm grateful to be here, and I am here really to continue the conversation that you all have been having this month around playing with paradox, and this week around getting comfortable with discomfort. So my intention is for us to start the conversation, start an uncomfortable conversation around death and dying, and to play with the paradox that that idea, that paradox of life and death. So I've been actually playing with the paradox that says, because I'm consciously living in God's highest idea for my life, now would be the perfect time for me to vision and plan for a dignified death or a beautiful death experience, which is absolutely a paradox. So let me back up a little bit and give you a little bit of context around where I'm situated at this moment. So as I mentioned, I am finishing up my master's degree at the Graduate Theological Union. I'm studying new religious movements focused on African American spiritualities. And during that time of study, I've also had been studying and secured my grief and death doula certificate. And so as I move around the world, it's always really intriguing and interesting when people hear that I'm a death doula, the response just surprises me every time. One, they either are in like awe and gratitude that this work, that someone is attempting to do this work. They are really grateful and ready to like move the paradigm and the understanding of that we've been living under this fear around death, this fear around the dying, and being afraid to go to the hospital, to be close to the bed at that time, to keep our children away from our dying relative. And these moments are really beautiful because people seem to really open up and they share these deep, intimate experiences that they've had with their loved ones during the dying process. And some people, they've had this beautiful experience and they just really want to ask questions around. One woman was thinking about her grandmother, and she was mentioning how her grandmother was experiencing, she was staring off into, just into nowhere. And she had kept talking about she was going home, and she was talking about an ancestor that has been dead for a long time. And just talking with this woman and giving her an opportunity to express that, she walked away with like tears of joy just to remember and to feel like her grandmother was in a beautiful place at that moment. And then sometimes people are really, riddled with guilt. Maybe they weren't there at the bedside. Maybe their loved one passed away before they had a moment to reconcile. But what I do notice throughout the process is that each time people share or talk it out or have a safe vehicle to just get it out, get their fears out, get their grief out, get their guilt out, they often walk away looking like they're lighter, if not expressing that they feel a lot better just having talked about it. So that's kind of where I'm situated and where I'm coming from at this moment. So the definition of paradox that I want to play with today, the definition says, a paradox is a statement that's seemingly contradictory or opposed to common sense, and yet is perhaps true. A paradox is a statement that is seemingly contradictory or opposed to common sense, and yet is perhaps true. So when I was talking about my initial paradox that I had been playing with, and put another way, the paradox says, if we can live out loud at the same time, enjoy life, appreciate, give gratitude to every day that we have, while at the same time preparing ourselves for a dignified death. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We don't have to be afraid of death or talking about it. And the contradictory question that came up for me as I had been considering and playing around with, I'm at a really good moment in my life. I feel great. I feel healthy. Why would I even want to consider talking about death or talking about my own death or planning for my own death? The contradictory question kept rising up as if I'm living my best life out loud, why would I want to take that sacred energy to spend and put my time on something that is not positive? And so I've been playing with that. And as I've been thinking about death, and primarily thinking about my own death, at first it seemed really morbid for me to sit and contemplate that and to even think about attempting to visualize a beautiful death. And if I'm honest, there were some taboos that came up for me. There was one really taboo superstition that I kind of grew up with. When you talk about something, you bring it into, your reality. So one of my biggest fears was, if I talk about death, if I let alone plan for a good death, I'm actually like inviting the Grim Reaper to come into my door, sit on the couch and say, welcome in, take me whenever you're ready. And so when I had that thought and I actually said it out loud, I mean, it was almost laughable. But what I've been noticing is when I have the opportunity to just get my fears out, put them on the table and look at them, they are not as scary as they were when they were kept inside. It's just like the resistance that comes up when we think about our own mortality. And so right now, I want to invite you all into this uncomfortable conversation. Because I've been pleasantly surprised about, when I do put my fears on the table, they're released. And so I want to call in anybody who is brave enough to step out of that comfort zone and to step into this uncomfortable conversation and to share any ideas or any reservations that might come up, or any hidden beliefs that might come up around death and why they are kind of putting the pause on you from acting or executing. So I'll let Paul, or I'll let you all take the questions, or should I just call on people whose hand I see?
I see that Constance has raised her hand. We all know we're going to do sharing throughout the process today, throughout the whole period of the service. So as we move into that, I just want to remind folks to either turn your camera on and raise your hand and I'll recognize you, or use your raised hand icon at the bottom as I just did, and we'll be able to see you. So Constance, we see your hand is raised. Would you like to share?
Sure. The thing that I mean, I totally, I like what you're saying, and the issue of dignified is sometimes not in our control. And to me, it's not about death. That at 78, it's more about what's happening to my body, what's happening to my abilities as I age, and what am I having to give up? Because it's already starting to happen, and it doesn't happen for everybody, but it does happen for some of us. So for today, for example, I went and I had lunch with a friend of mine who's got Alzheimer's, early stages Alzheimer's. By the time she gets to death, where is she gonna, it's a question. I don't know, where is she? I'm sure she's still there in the wholeness of her being, but she's not going to be aware as we understand it. And so to me, it's not so much about the end point, but it is about the point up to the end point. So I do remember talking to Reverend Jeff several times, our former minister, transitioned from cancer. And he told me several times he had talked to his doctor and said, well, what do I do? And the doctor just said, you live the best life you can right now. And so I think that's all we can do. And yet, the thing is that none of us know when our best buy date is, but at 78, I'm probably closer to it, most statistically, than a lot of people who are younger. So it is something. Anyway, so those are some of my thoughts about it. It was around the whole idea of dignified. Is it yes, that's exactly what I'm planning and what I want, and will I have the control? Will I be able to do that? And I can always do it in my inside, in the way I hold it, if I'm aware and able to do that.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Judith Roberts, go ahead.
Maude, I'm sorry my lighting is so low, but Maude, what is can you repeat the question? Can you reframe it for me?
Absolutely. So basically I'm asking about any fears around death, or any hidden beliefs that you recognize that are coming up when you start to think about preparing for, or putting a plan in place for your end of life, or how to spend your last year or so, that sort of thing. Hidden beliefs or fears.
Oh, hidden beliefs or fears. Oh, yeah, it's very intriguing question. As I've watched my family members, my mother had a pretty awful death of a 2-year decline from cancer. It was really awful. And my father lived a really long life. I mean, and was healthy until the end, and had a sudden death that was unexpected. So I have these two different models in my family of my parents. And I keep thinking that I'm going to follow after my father and have a long, healthy life, but we don't know. We don't know. And I get these calls regularly, these solicitors who are calling me about my end of life, it's insurance for your end of life expenses. And I often say to them, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not there. But maybe I should be there. And I mean, I'm not aware of fears around it, but I have hopes around it. And what I hope is that I can leave when the time comes. As Constance said, we don't know. We don't know what our expiration date is. But I have a hope that I can leave consciously. You know, that I'll be of sound mind, and that I'll be able to just have a conscious departure. And a graceful departure. That's my hope, but we don't know. And as far as final expenses and all of that, I've thought about that, because I don't want to be put in a coffin in the ground. And cremation now is more and more controversial because of being not environmentally sound as a way to go. And there's something called green burial. I've attended one, and that was quite beautiful. And now I've learned, my sister just told me there's a new thing where the body can be wrapped in it's a mushroom. It's a casket made out of mushrooms. And then I think you get buried and put in the ground, and then the mushrooms just eat everything. So it's supposed to be very environmentally sound. So I don't know. I don't really have fears around it. I have a lot of questions and hope around it. And I guess I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you.
Maude, if you want to respond to any of these, let me
gonna
know.
say beautiful. Thank you for your hope. Yes, thank you for sharing.
We see Dorothy.
Unmute yourself.
Hi. I've seen my mom and my dad and my grandmother make their transitions. And I was there to a point. For my grandmother, I had a neighbor. My grandmother was in a fire and she had burns. And the nurse who was taking care of her was a member of knew our family very well. And a doctor made an order that she did not agree with. And before it took place, my grandmother decided she was leaving. She wasn't going to have this on her. My mother, I had this surgery called a pen tag. And what a pen tag was to make sure that she was able to get food and medication through her stomach. But I had promised her there would be no surgeries. So when I went to see my mom, boy, did she make some ugly faces at me, like here she was in this hospital and you did this to me. But I stayed there and I made sure that she had what she needed. And when I decided to go home to stay that night with her, it was back east. It was December the 12th, because my mother died 80 years in a day. Her birthday was December 11th, and she died December 12th as I was walking through the door of the recovery center that she was in. And I know it was peaceful. My father, the same way, he had brain cancer, and he left with ease and grace. One of our family members was his hospice nurse, and he just wanted to ride around to all the places where he grew up and experience different things. And I said to my kids, I am 82 years old, and me and God has had this conversation. And I said, would you let me hang around to at least to be 102? Because I have some stuff I still have to do. Okay. And so I hope this conversation between me and God is going to work, that I'm going to be here to 102. Whether my kids want to treat me like an old lady who don't have no brains, okay? Or I'm going to keep moving the way I want to. So I'm blessed, okay? I don't have any fears. I got my little urn in the closet. All that is taken care of. My ashes going to be spread out there in Monterey somewhere when it's time. And if you didn't see me yesterday, you'll never see me again, okay? Because I ain't putting my family through all that memorial and all that stuff. No, I just want to be blessed and remembered that, hey, she was here and she was a good person and she's blessed. Thank you, darling. Thank you, Maude, for you and I having similar grandmothers, baby.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's so beautiful. I love it. 103, you said, right? Okay.
Andrea, you gotta unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Well, I have a friend who thinks that absolutely nothing happens when you die. And that just, it doesn't, well, it challenges my idea of what happens. And I don't know what happens, but I do think something happens. And there's just a couple of things associated with it. So, you know, I was thinking about this particular person, and I was thinking that maybe in some way our ideas about transition and death and life have to do with our early attachments. And if we have strong attachments, in some way it underlies some of our ideas about life and death. And even if we can't articulate, what it is, what it'll look like, it's that sort of that, it's that kind of faith in the connection to all that is. And maybe that's the faith in God, but it is about connection. And then the other thing that I was thinking about as the last speaker was speaking, I was remembering, you know, this is the time of year that my mom died, and she died very young. She died when she was 73. And she had outlived, she was an outlier for surviving cancer. lung cancer, and she was never a smoker. And she'll have been gone 15 years this in the next couple of days. And I always know, like, I always think about her because I remember at the time when she was dying, the leaves would be blown around on the ground. And it's just that, I don't know, I just remember that so well. And now when I see leaves being blown around on the ground, I just remember that feeling then. And when she died, I just had, my partner and I had been up with her a long, long time. And finally, we just got so tired, we went to sleep. We went to the bedroom. And then within just a few minutes, she died. And so the caregiver was there with her. And it was really an amazing thing that happened. I just had a sense at one point that, you know, we were all in the sort of the living area, the living room. I had this, I didn't even think twice about it. I just knew that her spirit was somewhere among us. And then I knew it was moving out the front door. And I took the caregiver and I took one of the quilts that she had made, and it was cold that night, and we just followed her spirit out. And people in my family were like, "Andre, what are you doing?" And we just followed it out. And I just knew that she was kind of lifting up beyond, beyond standing on the street. She was leaving. And I guess that's as much as I know about meaning. So that's it.
Thank you.
Wow, that was really powerful, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Connection. I think this is a good place to keep moving, if that's okay. We'll have time to talk a little bit more about vision and things in a little bit. So I want to just a little bit piggyback on the idea of connection that was just mentioned. And I want to talk about, many of you touched on the point that, we just don't know. And that's absolutely true. And we will never know, and we can't know until we have the experience. But so all we can do is choose, how we choose to believe or how we choose to think about it. And, we're in the philosophy of choosing beliefs that are life affirming, or beliefs that give us reason to keep going, versus versus the opposite. And so I want to talk a little bit about the science of mind point of view. So from a science of mind point of view, we often say and we engage in the idea that we are spiritual beings living a human experience or having a human experience. And science of mind asks us to embrace the polarity of humanity and divinity. And I say that dying is essentially human. We all have to do it. And the afterlife is essentially divine, and we all get to do it. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about my cultural ideas and how, when I began to genuinely contemplate about a good death or a dignified death, I recognized that my African-American tradition or cultural background prepared me for this idea of creating or even visioning for the end of my life. In African-American culture, death is not final. Death is not the end. Death is not the end of our connection to our ancestors. Even beyond the transition, we get to engage with our ancestors even more deeply sometimes. For me, it's even more deeply with my mom after her passing. We get to we get to stay connected to our ancestors in conversation, in engagement, in communication. And in African American tradition, our ancestors are here to protect us, here to support us. We're standing on their shoulders. We can embody the characteristics of some of our ancestors. We can call upon some of those characteristics to use them for whatever is required at the moment. And so in African American tradition, the ancestor, becoming an ancestor, is just like the natural, logical, and like beautiful step in the process of being human. And I personally love to hear cultural ideas or life affirming ideas around death. And I'm wondering if anybody has any of those that they'd like to share at this moment. Anything that you've heard, or you love the way that this tradition views death and that sort of thing. Any sharers?
Constance, I see your hand raised.
Well, I'll share again, but I've had quite a few experiences of people after they've died. And the first one was when my mom died, and I was in my early 20s, and I had a lot of guilt at that point. I had dealt with a lot of stuff, but I felt like she came back and she was inhabiting my body, and it scared the living daylights out of me because I didn't understand it. And then later on in my 30s, I had a friend who committed suicide, and I found her. And then she also wouldn't leave. She kept coming into my house. So I had to do a lot of stuff. I went to a lot of people and talked to them and did a number of things to help her move on. So I have no doubts that there's a continuity. In my culture, the whole thing about ancestors isn't as strong as it is in the African American culture, but and also I think that it's because there's a lot of mixed feelings about who your ancestors are in my culture, in my life anyway. So I work to honor them, because I realize now, as that I'm older, that even though there were things that my parents and my grandparents did that might not have been in the highest and best interest of everyone around them, they were doing what they could do. They were doing the best they could at that time. And so I have to honor that. I also worked for quite a long time in the First Nations community in Canada. And so I learned a lot about, I heard about those beliefs, because that's also very much of a strong ancestor culture. And so I think those have been a lot of the influences on me. But certainly my own direct experience has been the biggest one.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I'm wondering, have you tried to tap into that ability for these people who keep coming back to you? Have you opened up to your mom in that way since she was coming to you before?
Well, it's been almost 50 years now. I think she's really moved on, but I have done, before I moved to Canada, I had a friend who's a medium, and I was taking a class with her, and I was able to tap in and to actually get messages for other people in the group from people. And I also, when I was in British Columbia, I went to a spiritualist church because it was the closest thing I could find to, because I didn't even know about Science of Mind then, but it was, and every Sunday someone would get up and they would do readings, and some of them were quite profound. But the thing I found about the spiritualist church was, it was like, okay, so there's life after death. So then what next? Because that's as far as it seemed to go. So it wasn't like like one of the things about Science of Mind is it's not necessarily, I mean, we talk about the continuity of life, but it's much more about how do you live a good life here? How do you deal with your life right here and right now? And that to me is pretty important. But I did have, like there was one time this reader got up and he asked me if he said he had a message. It was okay. I said yes. And he said, someone's coming to visit you. And I thought, no, I can't think of anybody. And then my partner who was sitting next to me said, your dad's coming. I said, oh yeah.
Wow.
And he said, get roses and put them in every room. And so my dad and I didn't have the best relationship at that point. So my dad came to visit with his wife, and we had an evening, and the evening went quite well. We had put little tea roses in every room. The next day, every single rose was dead. It had been like it had absorbed the energy.
Awesome. Wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
All right, I see we have 2 other hands raised.
Reverend Sunshine next.
Yeah, we got 3 with Reverend Deb too. So and
Oh,
And we're coming up on
not
time.
quite. Wait, Reverend Sunshine, your turn.
Well, good. Thank you so much. I think my current response kind of goes for the last question too, in a way, but I'll start with your question about any cultural experiences. And my cultural experiences in the African American culture have been more around fear of death. I was raised around fearing death. And I think it was because people didn't understand it. They didn't want to understand it. They were afraid of it. And that got transferred to me even from young. I remember that the feeling tone of it. It wasn't necessarily what they said. Some of it was what they didn't say. A lot of parents are uncomfortable with answering kids about death because, like somebody said, you don't really know what happens with death until you go do it. And usually you don't come back and talk about it. It's not a near-death experience, it's just a death, right? And so I feel like I've gained on my own and through my spiritual practice much greater comfort on my own over the years with death as a part of life, such that I don't fear it. And I feel like I can interrupt that cycle of fear, with my son or with anybody else that I'm around, kind of like you can interrupt intergenerational trauma. That's the way I feel. The other thing that I would say is that I love the notion of, and you and I have talked about this, Maude, but it wasn't posed about my death. I love the notion of a beautiful death. To me, that reminds me of ritual. Y'all know I'm a ritualist. So, and death can be a ritual, right? So why not make it a beautiful death, whatever it is? It's all about a state of mind. And then the last thing I'll say, and I can make it intentional, even if like someone said, you don't know what your physical situation is going to be, or if it's going to be tragic when you die or what have you, that doesn't necessarily, talk about paradox, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be a beautiful death. It may appear as though it's not, but we don't know that. It could serve a greater, higher purpose, and it's all about the intention. And the last thing I'll say is I have a direct connection with the higher realm that I've nurtured, and I'm really clear about, even from Science of Mind principle, and I agree with you, Constance, that it mainly focuses on your life and your quality of life while you're here on earth, but it also talks about the continuity of our life in God, and that it, all expressions of life, including on the other side, are a part of life. And I believe that really clearly, and I'm connected with those higher realms and the angelic realms, not quite in the way that Constance was talking about, where she, has spirits that touch her and move through her, she can communicate with. And that connection affects my quality of livingness here on this earth, because I'm more purposeful, because I know that I'm here for a purpose. And as I grow into my power and my truth, it helps me to fulfill my mission here which in turn I feel has to impact my higher being when I get there. I'm complete. Thank you for the question.
Absolutely. Sunshine hit the nail on so many heads right there.
Yeah, and we're
Space
coming up on that 5-minute warning you wanted, Maude. So I'm giving that to you now. We have 2 more folks in line. So I'm gonna ask everyone to focus on brevity. You know, that's not my strong point, but I'll work on it. So the next hand was Dorothy for you, Maude.
I will laser mine. I want you all to know, my daughter was not raised as a religious science person, but the other day she came here and she was talking to her daughter, and she was talking about her connection with her grandmother who has made her transition to the other side of life. And she said she gets advice from my mother to keep her moving forward. So I'm complete. Just know, if you want to tap in, you can do this. You can do this. And I know that to be the truth because I've tapped into my mother myself. And so it is.
And
I'm
so it is,
complete.
Dorothy. Thank you so much. Maude, I'm gonna move right to Rev Deb in Savannah. Rev
Hey,
Deb,
Maude.
meet
So
Maude.
what came up for me is this celebration of life. Because what I realized is that when my mom made her transition about 17 years ago, and I was there for her transition, my sisters, my grandmother, so that whole line has made their transition over the past 20 something years. And what I realized was that when I knew in that moment, I explained to her, she was in the hospital, I explained to her what was going to happen and what the doctors were going to do. But what I also said was that, you know, I want some music in here. I want something in this space to celebrate her making this journey, you know, to the other side. And my cousins were there, my brother was there. But it was just a peaceful kind of, we were in that space. We weren't crying or anything because I'd been through this all so many times, but just in that space of just celebrating who she is in her life, of how she's lived here and what she's, you know, her next adventure. But one of the cultural things that I love to watch and to see is in New Orleans, when they have the line dance, when they have the celebrations of, you know, walking through the streets and celebrating people's lives of their loved ones and bringing that joy, you know, to that space in that moment. So it's, for me, it feels like there's a celebration that happens, and we can be sad, but celebrate who they are. And so I'm complete, but thank you for this.
Great. Thank you, Rev Deb. 2 more want to sneak in really fast, Maude. So Gabriella, I'm gonna ask you to be as brief as you can, and then we'll do Judith and we'll let Maude close us out.
Okay. Hi, thanks. I know that was like so last minute. Rev Deb, I love that you're bringing up music. I forgot that there's actually groups of singers that do just that. They go visit folks that are about to make their transition. I think K-Suzanne Massey used to be involved in a choir like that. And I just want to say, I do my own healing work, and sometimes ancestral healing work comes up if it's still in my body or if it's still in other people's body. And I've been told that the ancestors come to also receive the healing, the release of whatever you're releasing that you inherited genetically. And I've been doing that more and more. And I actually have a genealogy pie chart of my dad's side that has names and the year they were born, or at least most of them, if it's been found. And I'm starting to reference it when I do my healing work. If I can actually get a name of who had the wound that I'm healing. And the more I do it, the more I feel close to them. And I think I feel like I'm growing a little bit of a relationship with them. And I think they'll be there when I make my transition. I feel like a lot of ancestors are going to be there. That's how I see my death, and I've enjoyed the conversation, and I am complete.
Thank you, Gabriella. Judith?
Yes, I wanted to also thank Rev Deb for bringing up music, and Gabriella, I am one of those people who sings for people in hospice and who are transitioning. And it's called Threshold Choir, and I sing with them in the East Bay, and they're all over the country now. But I've also wanted to say I've had the honor of singing across 4 relatives, singing them across the threshold, across the veil, and at their bedside, and or vocal toning. Sometimes it's not singing with words, it's just vocal toning, but also sometimes singing with words. And that's what Threshold Choir does and is for. And it's just the most beautiful, beautiful service to be able to do, to be with somebody at that time. And I hope, and here's another hope, Maude, I hope that when my time comes that I am sung across. And I'm complete.
Great.
That's so beautiful. Thank you all for sharing.
Thank
I had no idea we would be having so much conversation. I had this whole visualization exercise, a little somatic healing going on. That's not going to happen. But what I will say,
we know the person that invites people back when she, she's right there. So I'm voting for that, Reverend Sunshine. But I'm sure you want to sum everything up.
Yes.
So we're going to give you this space to do that.
Thank you so much. So my summary is really, so although death is unpredictable and what follows can't be known until we experience it, like visioning for and taking the practical steps to create a beautifully dignified or well-loved end of life experience can help us to ensure that the transition into the next realm is, can happen with more ease and grace. So while we can't predict what our state would be, as Sunshine was saying, Reverend Sunshine was saying, what we can do is prepare those environmental elements. Like I envision I want to be at the beach, I want to have my family coming in, I want to be listening to my little grandkids play around me, that sort of thing. So I think that we can create the environmental elements to set us up, and we can choose, do our advanced directives so that things don't pop out of nowhere and people don't go against our wishes and things like that. So there are some things that we can do. And I would just encourage you all to, I would invite you to kind of do a visualization exercise where you just ask yourself the questions, just like you ask yourself when you're manifesting, money, you're manifesting success, like, what would you love your last days to look like? Who would be there? Where would you be? What would you smell? What would you feel? What would you like to engage in? How would you like to spend those times? And then take those practical steps to prepare yourself, to prepare your environment to the best of your ability. And then drop it and keep on moving. Because when you think about who you want to be at your bedside, that opens up a realm for you to recognize that, okay, I want my grandson to be there loving up on me. So I really want to spend some good quality, loving time with him right now while I'm happy and I'm healthy. So I think it puts our relationships into a different perspective when we get to think about, what we would like to experience at the end of that, at the end of life. And so I will call that my closing. And I'm so grateful to you all for engaging me in this conversation. It didn't seem so uncomfortable after all. So I think we just got comfortable in discomfort. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Peter, do you have something you want to say right quick? Your hand is up. Or is that a mistake?
No, I was just an error.
That's clapping with one hand, we call it.
I was meaning to do something else.
Okay, let's share, all of us, a moment of 2 hands clapping, thanking Maude so much for bringing this to us tonight. It was just divine and lovely. And that's the word I use for you, is lovely. So thank you so very much, Maude. Peter and I have some announcements for you right now. We're going to breeze through these as quick as we can to keep us on time. And then we'll get ready to close out. Okay. this Sunday, October 15th. My partner on Wednesday night co-hosting has been busy preparing for next Sunday, October 15th. Reverend Sally Bartholomew will focus on shaking up our worldview. Oof, these rich discussions and messages we're going to be receiving. Meditation is at 10 and service is at 10:30. Then on the following Wednesday, October 18th, a week from tonight, Congregate Crystal Fry continues the discussion on shaking up our worldview. Our meditation is at 6:30 and our service is at 7, and that will be in Zoom. The Diversity Circle Fall Potluck is Saturday, October 28th at 11:30 in the morning in the social hall. Get outside the Zoom box, bring a dish from your cultural heritage, and join in the discussion of what's next for the Diversity Circle. If you haven't already heard the news, Mary Ann Williamson is coming to Oakland Center on Saturday, October 21st from 7 to 9 p.m. There's no charge for this event, and all are welcome. For more information, please check out the events page. Our 2024 nonprofit partner applications are now open. Download the application from the nonprofit page on our website under the About Us page, or pick one up on Sunday at the check-in desk. The deadline for application is next Wednesday, October 18th. On Sunday, December 3rd, we are hosting a holiday craft fair in the social hall. If you'd like to share your creative gifts to sell, please fill out an application. Space is limited, so sign up soon. Paper applications are also available on Sunday, but they're in the social hall, or you can check out the online application on the events page of the website. Get your dancing shoes on and be ready to jazz it up at our music concert on Friday, November 17th at 7 p.m. The performance lineup is fantastic. Tickets will be on sale this Sunday. So we're going to take a minute and look at the folks here at the center that provide service in so many areas. We're so grateful. We bless them. There's so much happening at the center, and it doesn't get done without all of these folks and many others that make it happen. So we have events, workshops, classes, and more. Please visit our website at oaklandcsl.org and sign up for our weekly newsletter, The Village News. Remember to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook for special updates and content you'll only find by liking and subscribing to Oakland Center. Please like us and subscribe to Oakland Center today. So we're moving into our joyous giving time. Just take a moment and breathe in the gratitude that we have this forum where we can come midweek to be spiritually refreshed between Sundays. How blessed we are to have that. That's a gift that the center gives us. So to ensure that we can continue to receive this gift, we give back. And one of those ways is investing in our goodness. You can do that through gifts of time, treasure, and talent, whatever that may be. Just hold it close to your heart and follow along as I read our blessing of our giving. Divine love as me blesses and multiplies this offering. It blesses all that I am, all that I give, and all that I circulate. Thank you, love, as me. So, if you're considering financially supporting the center tonight or any time, it's available 24/7. Use the donate icon on our website's homepage if you'd like to submit an offering. Once there, you'll see the 5 ways to give via the donate icon, which is credit card, by mail, Zelle, by text, or you can join us on Sunday where we have a wonderful offering basket. An interactive offering basket that we have at our center. So I'd like to take a few minutes and thank all of you for attending. I really want to thank Maude. Thank you, darling, for coming and being with us tonight. I want to thank Reverend Sunshine and Alice Knudsen, who will be closing us out in the prayer with our prayer shortly. Thank you both for doing the opening and closing prayers. Want to recognize our ministerial support that's with us. And if I forget anybody, remind me. But I know Reverend Sunshine is here, so thank you, madam. And all the way from Savannah, Georgia, Reverend Deb Hammond is here. Anybody else on the list that I miss? Okay, and finally, the folks that make this all work together for us with great gratitude, I say thank you. To Peter up in Portland, he's our lead behind the scenes. My Alice's, Alice Herndon and Alice Knudsen, for all the little touches that you do. I also want to thank Constance Chapman, our administrator. She makes all of this come together with information and keeps us on track. So I'm so grateful to all of you. So I'm also grateful for prayer. And that's our chance to have a moment with the divine. And the one that's going to lead us in that process and that practice right now is one of our brand new practitioners, Maude. So we're going to put her on the spot, because there's not a spot where God is not, right? And that will be Alice Knudsen. Alice, if you'd take us home, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so everybody just take a nice deep breath, just breathing in and breathing out. This is the breath of God. For we are all one with the one. And in the sacred, silent moment, we relish in this divine love, this divine presence, this divinity that blesses us in all ways throughout eternity, in this present moment, and in this eternal present moment. For we are all one with God, all one with the mind of God and the heart and the soul of God. And how beautiful and how wonderful it is to know this spiritual truth. And I know that I am one with God, as I know that everybody here is one with God, and one beautiful individual manifestation of this divine love. And I give thanks for this evening together, and for Maude as she has led us into this magnificent time together to explore our life and our love so fully in this present moment and in this eternal moment that we live forever together. And all the gifts and all the sharing and all the opening of hearts that people have just taken the time to so lovingly devote this experience to sharing it with all of us, so that we all can grow and appreciate this beautiful life we get to live together in this community. And so I give thanks, and I send us all home with blessings, knowing that some of us are at home. And so it's easy, but our home is in our hearts, and we're all in the same heart together. And so I know as we leave this sacred time together, we leave filled with love and joy and blessings galore. And how beautiful it is. And please join me in saying, and so it is.
And so it is.